So I've put together this guide with these tips. I'm going to go through some of them. And then if you have any questions at all, I know we're not live, but if anything comes up and you have questions about that, you can put it in the comments and I will go ahead and go in and answer them. So we're in unprecedented times, as we've all talked about, and being in a confined space in our homes with each other, our children, our spouses, together all the time, 24/7, is very challenging. And I think this is actually challenging even for the best of relationships. And so, if you're somebody that was already struggling in your relationship with your partner or things were tense with your children, then being in this situation, excuse me, I'm going to grab my water, being in this situation is going to likely magnify those problems. So we're all kind of trying to figure out this new normal. And I think, well, we're about 4 weeks into it, so maybe on some level you have adapted to a new routine. But if you're still struggling, these tips could certainly help. So one of the things, and I'm just going to take a look at my notes, the first tip that I have is to have clear expectations with agreements. So again, we're all confined into the house. We've all adjusting to new routines, adjusting to parents working from home. And so there's really just not a lot of clear sense or boundaries around who's doing what when, right? It just, we've all just kind of been thrown into this and we don't maybe know what to do. So the best thing that you can do is get on the same page with your partner. Whether that, your husband and your children, if they're older, I think should be included in this, and decide, like, if you're both working from home, decide who's working when, who is going to be responsible for the kids during that time. Like, there's so many things within the house that have to be taken care of that maybe before just sort of naturally fell in place. Now it's going to be about really being clear with each other. What are the expectations? What expectations do we have of ourselves, of each other, of our children? Like, how do we want things in the house to go? And if we want them to go smoother, then we need to have clear expectations and be in agreement with that, right? Because if we have expectations without agreement, then one of us is going to be over here, the other's going to be over there, and there's going to be lots of misunderstandings. So this is another way of helping to eliminate some of those misunderstandings. So if this isn't something you've done yet, it would be really helpful to sit down with your partner. And like I said, if you have older children, you could even include them in this and decide what are those expectations going to look like for everybody. Number two is, and this isn't the order in the guide, but number two is stick to a schedule. So part of the expectations then is setting up a schedule, right? Is it, what time do you need to be up in the morning? What time do maybe your children are, if they're young, you might have to be more hands-on with getting them set up with school. If they're older, then maybe they're, more independent and can do that stuff alone. You're working from home. What time do you need to be up? When do you need to start working? So all of those things I think are really important in terms of schedule, like in knowing. Those would also all be part of the expectations, being clear about what that looks like. And on that same point of schedules, what's really important, I think, is to stick to a regular sleep schedule. Go to bed at the same time you normally would. Get up at the same time that you normally would. Eat your meals at the same time that you normally would. Because what happens if you get out of that routine, it really can throw everything off. Especially the sleep cycle. I've got a 15-year-old who wants to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning and then sleep until noon. And we just said no, because when your sleep cycle is off, it affects everything. It affects how you function during the day. It affects your brain. It affects your energy level. It just really can throw your whole rhythm off. So it's so important to stick to a regular sleep schedule. regular eating schedule of healthy meals. And if you're somebody that was exercising before, making sure to continue to incorporate that, even if it's not to the same degree, at least getting outside and doing some walking. So schedule, super important. We all love structure, right? Who doesn't love structure? We resist it, but at the same time, we all do better when we have structure in our life. So sticking to a schedule, again, super important. Self-care. We're all talking a lot about this. Okay, so self-care is different things for everybody. So whatever that is for you, make sure you're taking time for that. For me, it's just getting outside, right? And even if it's raining, I don't mind. I just love to be outside and with nature, fresh air, walking. But for you, it might be meditating, listening to music, sitting on the couch and reading a book. Whatever it is that fills you up, that helps you feel taken care of, you want to continue to do those things. If you're somebody with small children, I know that could be more challenging. So my suggestion is that you and your partner sit down and talk about like who's going to have time to themselves and when, because having that time alone to recharge is important. So if you can trade off time, that would be great. Because again, I know it's more difficult with young children. If you've got older children, it's probably a little bit easier to fit that in. But make a point of talking to your partner, and if it needs to be swapping time with each other, give that gift to yourself. So number 4 is don't assume. And so this all kind of goes in with the expectations too, because in good times, making assumptions can cause things to really go south fast, right? So this all fits in with the expectations. This way, if we're clear about what our expectations are, then we're not making assumptions, right? Don't assume that your partner is going to do something, or don't assume that they know what you need. Don't assume they know what you're thinking, right? Because what happens is when we have expectations without agreement, we assume our partner's going to do something or not do something, or he's going to know what we want. And then when it doesn't happen, maybe we're disappointed, we're frustrated, we're angry, but we've made an assumption based on, us just thinking they know what we want, right? And that's something I work on with my clients a lot. As couples in living together, we make a lot of assumptions about what the other person is thinking, what they might be believing. We make assumptions about how they're going to respond to something, and we act based on those assumptions. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble, right? That's where and we could do this with our children too. We assume they're going to do something a certain way. They're going to get up at a certain time. They're going to be responsible for the things they need to do. And when they don't, we're frustrated and disappointed. So I would say, notice if you're making assumptions. And I know that I do this myself. I might be having conversations in my own mind, and then you forget that you haven't actually communicated that, right? And you just assume they know. So the more you can notice kind of your own thought pattern and your own thinking, and really making sure that you're communicating clearly and communicating your expectations, not leaving it up to chance and not making assumptions, then it's going to go a long way to avoid misunderstandings and unnecessary conflict, frustration, or potentially arguments. And lastly, I put embrace the suck. And I don't say that to, come across as mean or anything. But if we just accept that this is the place that we are right now and we stop resisting it, then there's not so much of that frustration or it shouldn't be this way feeling, right? Because when we believe that things shouldn't be the way they are, then we cause ourselves unnecessary suffering, right? So when I say embrace the suck, I mean just let it all be. Just kind of give into this is where we are, right? And we can choose how we want to think about it, but thinking it should be different than it is, again, is only going to make you feel frustrated, or it's going to make you suffer more. So just let it be, accept that this is where we are at this moment in time, and then you get to decide how you want to think about it. I like to say to my clients sometimes it's like all a matter of perspective. When it's raining outside, one day we might feel like, oh, isn't this wonderful? It's raining. The grass really needs watering. Or I love a rainy day because it's a good excuse to stay inside. Or you could think, well, that really sucks. I hate when it rains. It puts me in a really bad mood, right? All perspective, same circumstance, different thoughts about it, right? So the circumstance is what we're all living right now. We just have to accept that this is where we are. But you get to decide how you want to think about it. Okay. So I think that was it. To run through those 5 tips again: clear expectations with agreements, sticking to a schedule, not making assumptions, engaging and making time for self-care, and finally, embracing the suck, just allowing it to be, this is where we are, right? And that final thought was, the circumstance is what it is, but we get to decide how we want to think about it. So those are my 5 tips. I hope that was helpful. I will put a link in the comments if you'd like your own copy. If there are any follow-up questions to that, feel free to reach out to me either in the comments or by messaging me. And I hope you're all doing well. And again, Lori, thank you for having me on. Take care.